The winter air in Vienna was sharp, almost surgical, cutting through the cobbled streets and curling into the corners of the city's Baroque facades. The Danube's icy waters mirrored the gray clouds that stretched endlessly across the horizon. Inside, a centuries-old apartment overlooking the city's bustling market square, Martin Weber, a man of 54 with a sharply lined face and eyes that had learned to distrust, stirred his coffee absent-mindedly. The ornate brass spoon rattled against the china, but his mind was elsewhere, wandering over decades of family tension and secrets he had long tried to bury. His son, Lucas, 8 years old, approached cautiously, his small boots tapping lightly on the wooden floor. He held the innocence of youth in contrast to the heavy atmosphere of the apartment, the scent of roasted chestnuts drifting from the street below, blending with the faint aroma of old books and stale tobacco smoke. "Dad," Lucas began, voice hesitant but determined. "What does sloppy second mean?" Martin's hand froze midair. The phrase was familiar, an echo from a past he had tried to erase, a cruel term his own father had used to haunt him, a constant reminder that nothing he did was ever good enough. He set the spoon down with precision, gripping the mug tightly as he forced himself to meet Lucas's gaze. "Where did you hear that?" he asked, his voice low, controlled, but tinged with something far darker beneath. "Uncle Felix," Lucas said, shuffling his feet. "He said it about me, about my drawing." Martin's chest tightened. Felix, his younger brother by 3 years, had always been the favored child, the one who inherited their father's charisma and wealth, while Martin had been left to navigate life under a relentless shadow. The rivalry had festered into something deeper than envy. It had shaped Martin's very sense of self. And now, it was poisoning the next generation. Winter turned to early spring, and with it, Martin's obsession grew. He watched Felix through the filtered lens of family gatherings, social media, and whispered conversations at cafes. Felix had married well, inherited the family's industrial empire in Graz, and flaunted his children with meticulous care. Meanwhile, Martin's modest career as an art restorer paid the bills, but he remained the sloppy second in everyone's eyes, including, it seemed, his own sons. The plan began as a subtle infiltration. Martin started visiting Felix's gallery openings under the guise of artistic interest. He complimented the paintings with the precision of a critic, sowing seeds of doubt in Felix's mind about his artistic circle. He learned of Felix's financial vulnerabilities, the thinly veiled tension between his wife, Annette, and him, the way Felix relied on others to mask his insecurities. Martin listened, smiled, and took notes, never revealing his hand, never letting his anger become obvious. By midsummer, Martin had enlisted allies he knew Felix would never suspect. Former employees who had been mistreated, old friends of the family who still harbored grudges, even Annette's confidants who had grown tired of her husband's arrogance. He planted subtle insinuations, hints of betrayal, and small manipulations that compounded into whispers of chaos. Lucas watched this transformation with fascination and unease. His father, once quiet and restrained, was becoming something else, a predator cloaked in civility. Lucas's mother, Ingrid, noticed the change, the tightness in Martin's jaw, the long hours he spent out of the apartment claiming research for his restoration work. "Martin," she said one evening, while he inspected a Renaissance painting in their cramped studio, "this obsession, it's changing you." Martin's eyes were hard, unwavering. "It's not obsession, Ingrid. It's justice. Someone has to correct the record." By autumn, the Weber family gatherings had become battlegrounds. Martin's interventions, so expertly subtle, began to fracture Felix's social image. At a charity gala in Salzburg, he overheard Felix's associates question the legitimacy of a new art acquisition, a seed of doubt planted carefully by Martin weeks before. Felix's wife, Annette, began to argue more frequently with him, her irritation amplified by anonymous notes suggesting infidelity and mismanagement. Then came the pivotal moment. Martin discovered Felix's secret, one that could destroy him entirely. Years ago, Felix had embezzled funds from the family business, an act Martin had long suspected but never proven. The evidence was buried in a series of coded ledgers, hidden in plain sight among the corporate archives. Martin, meticulous and patient, decrypted the records, compiling a dossier that could topple Felix's empire overnight. Winter returned to Vienna, the air heavier this time, snow falling silently on the rooftops. Martin invited Felix to his apartment under the guise of reconciliation. Lucas sat nearby, drawing quietly, unaware of the storm about to unfold. "Felix," Martin began, voice calm, "do you remember what you told Lucas about being a sloppy second?" Felix's smile faltered, unease flickering in his eyes. I was joking," he stammered. Martin leaned forward. "Was it a joke when you decided to steal from our family? Or when you convinced everyone I was incompetent?" He spread the ledgers and supporting documents across the table. "Here is your joke. And now, everyone will know." Felix's face went pale, the mask of charm crumbling. He lunged for the papers, but Martin's control was absolute. In that moment, the culmination of decades of pain, of humiliation, of quiet scheming, crystallized into triumph. Yet, the victory was not clean. Annette, horrified by the public disgrace and fearful for her children, severed ties with both brothers, taking them far away from the city that had witnessed their family's disintegration. Lucas, who had once idolized both men, now saw the weight of vengeance and the emptiness it left behind. Martin returned to his apartment alone, the streets of Vienna blanketed in fresh snow. He sipped his coffee and gazed out the window at the city, the spires piercing the winter gray. Lucas approached again, holding a small drawing of the Danube at sunrise. "Dad, am I a sloppy second?" he asked quietly, eyes wide, searching. Martin set the cup down, his hands trembling ever so slightly. He knelt to meet Lucas at eye level, the intensity of his own moral battle reflected in the child's innocence. "No," he said finally, voice soft but unwavering. "You are the first and the only one you need to be. Never let anyone, especially family, tell you otherwise." Outside, Vienna moved on, oblivious to the quiet wars waged in apartments and boardrooms, to the scars left by rivalry and the precarious balance between love and destruction. Martin understood, as he never had before, that revenge could topple empires, but it could not heal the hearts it had touched, especially the tender one that now looked up at him with hope amidst winter's chill. The story of the Weber family would be whispered in society pages and boardroom chatter, a tale of betrayal, cunning, and ruin. But within the quiet corners of an old Viennese apartment, Martin and Lucas would start anew, tracing the fragile line between legacy and redemption, learning slowly that sometimes the hardest victories are those won in the heart. Spring arrived, melting the last of the snow along the Danube. Martin walked with Lucas along the riverbanks, their shadows stretching long in the afternoon sun. The boy held his father's hand, a gesture simple yet profound, as if the world itself had offered a chance to heal, even amid the wreckage of a family's fractured soul. Martin knew the road ahead was long, Trust would need to be rebuilt, wounds carefully tended, and the lessons of betrayal carried as both warning and guide. But for the first time in decades, he felt the faint pulse of something more enduring than revenge. The possibility of love, and the quiet, steadfast hope that one day, history might finally judge him not as a sloppy second, but as a man who had learned the full, devastating cost of family, power, and forgiveness. Winter would return, as it always does. But the snow had melted from the Weber family streets, leaving room for the fragile growth of reconciliation. For Lucas to learn that strength is not in vengeance alone, but in understanding, courage, and the choice to rise above the shadows cast by those who came before.